Okay, folks, here is another example of how to draw Trinity Church. And what I'm going to do here is, this is how I would draw it if I had a client that wanted me to do a drawing of the Trinity Church. And I might be a little bit more inclined to be more careful about placement of the various elements. Now I just drew the same view, more or less, using a sort of outline approach. Here I'm drawing the outlines very faintly in pencil, and then later I'm going to, and not too much later, I'm going to do it pretty quick, I'm going to draw it using pen, and I'm going to draw it in a style that is showing not only the texture and the shape of the objects that make up this very complicated building. I'm going to draw it where you can hopefully see the color of the drawings of the elements, and already I'm finding myself frustrated. I'm imagining my frustration as I work on this, because I'm just looking at all of the details that I'm going to show and try to show, and there's a heck of a lot of stuff I have to show. And the drawing I do after this, I'm going to try to do just in pencil, so that you have a sense of why drawing in pencil in some cases is much smarter when you want to show more things. But we're going to draw this in ink first, and the ink, I'm going to draw it using not a cross-hatching style, but a hatching style. Another thing that I'm doing here that is sort of getting in the way of my ability to draw it is, in order to see what I'm doing, I'm leaning my body way over so that I can see around the camera. And so I will have a very sore back. Yeah. Wine. Can you ever be in a good mood, Mr. Gustafson? I don't think so. I think that that's just impossible. Okay, so here is the outline of what I'm going to now try to render in ink. And I'm not going to, do the drawing as detailed and or as accurately as I might have to if I was hired by the Episcopal Church to render this magnificent example of their architecture. So I'm being a little loosey-goosey in how I draw it, because again, I think of the group Urban Sketchers as people that delight in the act of drawing. They're not urban renderers. It sounds like people that render fat, doesn't it? They're not urban renderers. They're sketchers. They like to sketch. The word sketch, I think, implies a looseness and a informality that rendering rendering is just too serious a word. And Urban Sketchers is their name of their outfit, not Urban Renderers. So now, in the real building, the brick area here, the conical roof of this tower is made of medium brown colored stuff, whether it's stone or some sort of shingle, what's the word I want? Shingles. I do not know. The background over here, these are red, which I imagine are terracotta. This area here is white-ish stonework, big bricks. And you know, if I were to draw all of this in detail, it would all just turn black. It would just be full of lines representing color, shape, texture. So when you're drawing in any medium, when you're drawing anything in any medium, you have to decide what you want to draw. And I just did a drawing where I was drawing the outline of the objects that make up this building. And it wasn't just, you know, a cone on top of a cylinder. It was a cone with a pattern on it on top of a cylinder. Now I'm trying to draw the same thing as I just drew, except I'm trying to draw the shadow, trying to imply that this is a rounded thing by the light hitting this side and the dark shade being on the other side. That was something that I didn't show at all in the earlier drawing I did. That was not part of that vocabulary. Now here you see I'm adding a crosshatch line over that whole pile of stuff because this is dark. So is this. There's no area that's light. This is all pretty dark in here. But if I make it completely dark, you won't see that there's a sculpted pattern to it. Here, there's a little sphere on top of a little cone on top of shingles, and in this case the shingles here, they look like bricks. These are triangular little shingles. So I'm drawing the pattern, and now I'm drawing the color, and already a line on top of a line is turning into mush again. I told you that would happen. I warned you, didn't I? Will the court reporter please read what I just said? Yes, he did say that this was going to turn into mush, and I was correct. Okay, now, way down here at the bottom, there's actually excitement happening because there's areas that are completely black. And behind, through these columns that are in shadow in some cases, in some cases they're partly in shadow, and I've already screwed it up. I'm cheating. I forgot this flat section right there. There is all of these columns in shadow or shade, depending. There's a difference between shadow and shade. Let's see if I can explain that to you. You know the difference. You don't have to have me explain it, but I will anyway, because maybe you don't know the difference. Shadow is a cast dark area cast onto something else. The shadow of a tree is shaped like a tree, and it's on the ground. But it's cast onto the ground. Shade, on the other hand, is this is shade right here. This is light and that's shade. And shadow would be this shape cast onto another surface. And oh, Pierre, just shut up and draw. I'm unable to draw and talk at the same time. And I'm always unable to actually make sense, regardless of whether I'm drawing or talking with all my concentration. So this whole area here, from this point to this point, is all relatively dark because it's in shade, but it's also in shadow. I don't know if you can be in shade and in shadow at the same time. So I'm just gonna draw and not talk. Just you can just watch me, because already I'm running into problems, and this project was supposed to be finished hours ago in the gallery, and it's still on my desk. This is an amazing bit of architecture. So much fun. I'm sure when I look at this drawing right side up with my head not tilted as it is right now, I'm going to see all sorts of issues. These are these interesting little things sticking out of the roof. And this roof has 8 sides to it. And this side is in shade. So this facade is facet, I guess, is darker than this. Below this, there's all these columns and arches and more columns, and then there's another right over here. There's the sister turret. There are 4 of these turrets around this roof, this octagonal roof. So we have another identical patterned, they look like big cinder blocks, conical top in this sculpted bit here, and then we're back down to the same sort of stonework as you see there. In between these 2 columns is this thing here. This is a shadow cast downward from the eave here, roof line. Anyway, as you can see, this is a nightmare. Is it a nightmare? Are you going to have nightmares about this? I will. this is another. It's just an amazing building. You have to go look at it. It's, those of you that are in another country, in another state, in another city, just do yourself a favor, buy a ticket, come to Boston just to look at this building. Nothing else. It will be worth the trip. What fun. It's 4 big towers on around this thing, this octagonal roof. There's 4 towers around each of these 2 smaller roofs. Now, it's just a delight. So, take my advice. And hop on a plane and come visit. Call me up on the phone, we'll go for lunch. Now I'm drawing it like I drew the one beforehand. I'm drawing the outlines of things. I'm not supposed to do that. I want to just draw the shadows, the lights and the darks. I don't want to concern myself with the actual, what is this part? I guess that's how this is different from the drawing I did earlier, the one I did before this. I'm drawing here the lights and darks. Before I was drawing sort of the outlines. Now I'm drawing the values. And it's very hard because we think, we don't, when we start drawing things, we start thinking of the objects. We don't think about the values often. I was a teacher's assistant at one point, and when I was in grad school, and I had my poor students suffer through many of the assignments I gave them, and one of the hardest assignments was drawing with ink wash, and that's something that was completely foreign to many students from the beginning, just holding a brush in your hand to draw with, not a pencil, not a pen, but a brush. And I chose a still life to essentially paint with ink wash, and the still life I made was not a bowl of fruit. It was not an old tennis shoe. It was, boy, this is way out of proportion. It was a heap, an absolute heap, pile of saxophones and clarinets and trophies, bowling trophies mainly, and there was glasses, water glasses filled with some liquid. There were mirrors, and everything was just heaped in a pile on top of each other. And I asked people now to pick up your paintbrush full of ink and draw it. And the class they seized up. It was like a motor that suddenly ground to a halt because they had no idea what to do. And because you couldn't divide all of the pile of stuff up into their parts. You couldn't even tell where one saxophone left off and the reflection of it started. It was just a gob full of random reflected shapes. Am I looking at this bowling trophy, or am I looking at a reflection of the bowling trophy? Am I looking at, it just became a pile of stuff. So you had to actually, the only way you could draw it was to forget about what the objects were. And you looked at what you saw. There was a triangle of dark. Okay, I'll make a triangle of dark. There next to it was a sort of trapezoid of a gray medium tone, and you drew that, and then next to that was another sort of a circular thing that was very light, so you left that alone. And you ended up, at the end of the day, you ended up with this rendering, this drawing of this still life, and parts of the still life looked like a part of a saxophone. Another part looked, it looked like what it was, a gob full of stuff. And you were able to understand it as a gob of stuff. But you could not, the people that were stuck in drawing the saxophone and then drawing the trophy and then drawing the something else got a mushy mess. Just like this. This is a mushy mess. Because it's just, there's too many things happening. I'm going to try to draw the same image differently, and I'm going to see if I do any better on it. Again, this particular drawing, the drawing I did before, this one, essentially the same area, same elements, was drawing the outline of the parts. Here I'm drawing the colors associated with the parts. I don't know what I'm going to do next. Probably jump out the window.